Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Hello kindred longevity lifestyle designers, this is Gavin, your secrets of longevity.com. This is a response video to an article posted just recently. It was actually trending at the top of my Facebook little news trends thing. That's not necessarily global, but I'm sure lots of people all around the world have already seen this popular article titled Why I Hope to Die at 75 by Ezekiel J. Emanuel. Now, it's a very long article in The Atlantic. It's worth a read if you're interested in understanding this aberrant sort of philosophical perspective on health and life. I obviously disagree with it, that's why I'm making the response. And my basic premise is that you could say nature, or the effect of being an animal that has survived and been the end result of evolution of survival from everyone in my ancestral past, going back to little microorganisms. And you cannot deny that, things want to survive. There's nothing in nature that wants to die except for when the suffering is so great that it just gives up. So to announce in maybe the just after or just post of your prime in life, Ezekiel is in his late 50s, but to announce that when you're not, being crushed in the jaws of some giant predator where, you might be in so much pain or shock that you just, you give up when your spine's been severed or something. That goes against our natural biological drive. And I personally think, and it just makes sense, that anything or anyone that doesn't still have that drive has a deathless mentality, and it's counter to our inborn nature as wanting to survive and wanting to propagate the species, etc. Not everyone has to have the same virility of that essence, that core drive, and it obviously wanes through life, and perhaps that's just an effect that Dr. Ezekiel's experienced. Maybe it's hormones out of whack. It's hard to know without knowing him personally, obviously, or being aware of what might be going on in his life. But it kind of sounds like someone who's slightly depressed. There's this haze of, I'm fine with it, I'm just accepting it, but I have this really bleak outlook and just kind of want to accept death as it is. Now, he's not saying he wants to commit suicide, so I'm not trying to say he's depressed in the way that's to that extreme. I'm talking about a core, aberrant belief program that's just kind of set itself up within him. No idea what the result of that beginning of that kind of a perspective could be, but there's a whole host of possibilities. It can largely be cultural. One thing he argues against here is that there's an increase in a desire for compressed morbidity, which is the idea that as we age, if we were going to die at a certain age, the preferential way to die is very rapidly, as opposed to this long, slow, gradual decline. And that's a totally valid desire, and there's medicine and research going into how people can do those sorts of things, and that happens in the longest lived areas of the world, where people live to 90s and their centenarian time frames on a regular basis. The places with the highest amounts of long-lived people generally have that compressed morbidity effect because they're active, they're eating well, they're in a community with a lot of support around them, and that is exactly that. Now, what Ezekiel is saying is that at 75 he will just drop doing anything that would help his health, whether it's getting blood tests to check up on what's happening, whether it's going off medication, which he's actually apparently already on, a blood pressure lowering medication. So who knows what he has, because he's saying he will take medicine up until that 75th birthday. So if he develops something that is even more severe, that some sort of medication he's on is actually completely preventing him from dying, is he just going to suddenly stop taking that at 75? This is like 15 years out, and he's making this claim that he's going to have that same view when he's 75. Perhaps, he's about to become a great-grandfather, and he's just going to, stop his medication that's like going to allow him to see his great-grandchildren. I mean, he might. I'm not saying we need to ridicule him or anything, but, this is a deathist mentality. This is something I've talked about a long time on my channel and kind of rallied against. I'm going to talk about a few little snippets from the article, obviously not read the whole thing, it's ginormous. But here's one headline: Americans may live longer than their parents, but they are likely to be more incapacitated. Does that sound very desirable? Not to me. Well, if you do any amount of research into why that would be, like, just read the fucking headlines of health sections of various media, and massive amounts of diabetes and obesity and heart disease are exploding, and cancer from all manner of environmental factors. Of course that's not desirable, but that is not a healthful thing. That happens when people get to that place because they're not doing healthful things. So in another part of the article, which is just a paragraph above what I just read, it says, I am talking about how long I want to live and the kind of amount of healthcare I will consent to after 75. Americans seem to be obsessed with exercising, doing mental puzzles, consuming various juice and protein concoctions, sticking to a strict diet, popping vitamins and supplements, all in a valiant effort to cheat death and prolong life as long as possible. This has become so pervasive that it now defines a cultural type, what I call the American immortal. Oh yes, it's so aberrant and weird to take care of yourself and do things that might be proven to, help your health and stave off those things that you then criticize later on as being things we don't want to have happen, because that makes the slow decline to death unpleasant. So it's like this bizarre hypocrisy, literally only separated by 2 sentences in the article. It's only like within the first section of the article. So there's not actually a real argument as to why it's undesirable to live a long time and to do things that might extend your life. He's just like saying it's a crazy trend, it's a cultural thing that's like obsessive or something. There's certainly absolutely people that we see in the health world who get obsessed and caught into things that become obsessive and detrimental to their health. But those stand out in our minds as the things when we personally don't want to do that. So when we want to do something, we see like all these people doing something healthy and we think, oh, they're getting good results. When we don't want to do that because it's too much effort or we have an emotional bias to our lifestyle of comfort and laziness, we see people taking care of their health and we think, oh, but there's that one person out of 100 who's obsessive and, they're like some crazy raw vegan and they actually have an eating disorder and they're losing weight and all this, and we take that thing and blow it out of proportion. And then we blanket label all people that are into health with this obsessive type stereotype or character trait, which isn't accurate. It just simply isn't. Another thing he talks about quite often throughout the article is how leading up to the end of one's life, for most people, it isn't very, romantic. It's, steady decline and parts of your body start falling apart. And I think what Emanuel is suffering from is a pervasive cultural bias against the aged. Now, I'm not some wise old person, so there's things I haven't seen in the world, but I've seen past generations in my family die off, and then it's gone on to the next generation, and they're getting older, and I see relatives at different stages in their lives getting closer to that point where they're getting more decrepit. But I can actually see the aspects about them that have value. Old people aren't just these things we put away in dusty corners to have them fall apart, and we visit them once a month to try and ease their suffering. We visit them because we get value from it. We want to hear their stories of them when they were younger, because that reflects onto us, because that's our heritage, that's our ancestry. My grandparents are still very vibrant, but they're getting older, and I see things changing in them. But I also see things I never noticed about them before, because I'm older, first of all, and I can see these things. And they're getting into that place of reflection. They're telling me about their grandparents, who I have no concept of, obviously. and it's beautiful. And to just talk about old people in this like way that it's just all horrible and a decrepit decline, it's not true. This is a pervasive idea within Western culture, which I think has led to the loss of the value of old people and their wisdom, their accumulated wisdom. And you could easily argue that a lot of the modern ills of society are due to the obsessive focus on younger people and putting them on pedestals, as opposed to putting our elders and our betters on pedestals, and we take our place as we progress in life and play our part at that stage in life. And you can even see it in world leaders, like take the U.S. presidents, for example. Obama was one of the youngest U.S. presidents ever. Several decades ago, you wouldn't have never seen someone on the campaign trail without gray hair. So that's nothing to knock Obama. I don't want to make this political. It just happens to be that the most recent president came into office at one of the youngest ages. And there's all sorts of things he's trying to say that back up his ideas, like the average age at which Nobel Prize winning physicists make their discovery is 48. So maybe they can contribute something when they're 108 that is of different type of value. It might not be the cutting edge stuff. That just means people at that peak 40 to 50 years of age are making the biggest discoveries in their life. That doesn't mean that they don't have value in another 20, 30, 40 years. Their role certainly changes. It's not going to be in the limelight. That's for the people, at the peak of their career. But again, these people have value, and you should look forward to the time when you might be in that position to give that value to your relatives, your friends, whomever you have in your life that you can impart your wisdom onto once you're at that point. I wish all of my relatives had lived longer who had died, because there's things that I know about myself now that I want to know about them, ancestry-based things. So I really don't understand the ideas he has, because he does have kids and does talk about wanting to see milestones and spend time with his family, but why would you want that to end? Why would you want to suddenly go that rapidly? He is talking mostly about ending allopathic-based medical treatments that might extend his life. But he also did knock the natural routes, so that just, inaction is not something you want to do. That completely defies all areas of health. Like, you could say the same thing at 30 if you just sit around on a couch because, these people who are obsessed about their health are just wasting their time, not enjoying life, but you're not moving. It just goes against all these ancient philosophies of what brings about health, which is movement, which is dynamic action. And it's true and exists right up until we do actually die, that if you persist with that, you'll live to a very great age, exercise being a major factor there. Now, I think there's an undercurrent here, possibly. It's not that prevalent and it's kind of conspiratorial, but because it's also done so well and got so high on social media, I think this is trying to put something out there in the American psyche that is a little bit of a deathist mentality. We've heard about death panels, and Sarah Palin was knocked quite a bit for talking about them, but a lot of lefties, liberals have had to eat their words on knocking her, because there's actually been changes to Obamacare to remove aspects of it that really were too close to what she was describing. And I've got a link below, that's below, link number 2 below the article I'm responding to if you want to read about that. So I'm not saying there's anything about death panels in Ezekiel's article, but it's this idea that at a certain point we shouldn't do anything because it's a burden on the system. And while there's an argument for that, the counter-argument is, why would you have a system? Why wouldn't you have private health care? And then if someone wants to live a long time and has amassed some resources in their life, and they personally want to put those resources to that purpose, they can choose to do so. When you have this mindless automaton that is the socialist type programs that come about from these things, you have people that might want to live longer who don't get treatments because idiots like this put out articles that have swayed the public or may sway the public into adopting a deathless perspective, and then the majority vote away the rights of the minorities, unfortunately. And then the third link below is a video I did very recently on the benefits of memento mori, which is a practice or a style of art where you meditate or focus on death or imagery of death, whether it's a skull, whether it's a painting of death with a scythe and an hourglass or something like that. And I think this is very valuable, but it's not saying I want to die. It's not saying I'm accepting and accelerating towards death. It's saying death is something that's there as a possibility at every turn, in case of rare accidents and things. So in this moment, for this day, for even this period of my life, I'm going to be my best and work my hardest for the goals that I want to do. So there's nothing in that is about giving up. It's actually about being aware of death and trying to stoke that fire of survival within yourself, which is a very wild, primal instinct, which defies anything that's trying to impose its will on you, of trying to make you submit and give up. And finally, I just wanted to throw in another video of mine. Link number 4 is a video, Can We Live to Be 1,000 plus years old? And it just goes into some of the philosophy and ideas about what's coming down the chute in terms of medical advances that is going to drastically increase human longevity. It's well worth a look if you have a deathless mentality, if you have a life-based mentality. And I really want to hear what you guys think about this, whether you saw the article and read it, what you think of my video here responding to it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.